Every game that came out before Overwatch was old generation, but every game that came out after it was new generation. The Team 4 devs at the time, they did not understand the shooter game they made. There was a fundamental lack of understanding of every matchup, how the game flowed, how things work, and you could see it in the way that these heroes came out. Jeff Kaplan was at Blizzard for 19 years, guys. 19! That's a long time. That never happens. Maybe it was just time. Guys, I've got something great for you all today. Today's video is brought to you by Factor 75. You guys know I love feeding you guys at home. Any deal I can get you guys' food, because you know, as gamers, and especially me, like, you know, I'm trying to juggle 2 jobs right now. I'm running my channel and running Mindplex at the same time. There's a lot on my plate, and having like pre-prepared chef-made meals delivered to me at a great price is super, super important. With my code down in the description, you guys will get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders using my link. Everything you need will be down in the description, guys. Really, and I mean this, like, being able to eat healthy, especially as a gamer, is something that we all take for granted. I've been on a big health journey myself with eating more protein. I've cut drinking out of my life, and I'm really being the best version of me that I can be on a day-to-day basis. And Factor saves you the cost of grocery shopping, saves you the time, the hassle of prepping, cooking, or cleaning up food. If you're a busy guy like me, like you just don't have time to do that, right? So, you know, being able to enjoy like home-cooked meals that are high quality when you don't really have the time to handle it yourself and it's super, super affordable is a big win-win-win. So please help out the channel. These brand deals are how we pay for our channel managers and our editors, I'm even able to get content out to you guys at all. Help out the channel and check out Factor 75 down in the description, and do yourself the favor and eat healthy. So yeah, I love getting you guys food deals. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sponsoring today's video. Let's get into the action. So I think Stylosa, first of all, I love Stylosa. He's one of the few people that I've you know, my circle has definitely shrunk over the years. He's one of the few people that I've tried to keep in touch with and keep up with. Stylosa is a real one, man. He's a great dude. And he's kind of been around Overwatch since its inception. He's an old school dude. He knows his shit, and he doesn't fall for bullshit. I gotta give Stylosa a huge shout out. Obviously, like, my word isn't everything. I'm not trying to say, be like, my word is everything. I know everything, all this. But I will say Stylosa gets the Samito real one stamp of approval. This dude will speak his mind, and he'll be honest with his players and or his viewers, and I respect the hell out of him for that. He's a great dude. So Sty, I hope you're doing well, brother. Everyone, be sure to head over to his channel and check him out. But let's hear what he has to say, because Stylosa was more behind the scenes from the very beginning at Blizzard, so he probably has some good insight on all this. I'm very keen to see what he has to say. Let's give it a watch.
Really know why Jeff Kaplan left Overwatch. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the channel. So we've got a lot to cover in this video. There is an Overwatch mobile game in development. There was an idea to reboot Overwatch back from the ex-president Mike Ibarra, who actually has been fired from Blizzard, subsequently, or let go rather, after the Microsoft acquisition.
I told you guys, Overwatch Mobile is absolutely going to happen. With the amount of success that Call of Duty Mobile had, and like, listen, people don't realize how big mobile games are. In 2020 alone, again, granted this is a COVID year, mobile gaming was 70% of gaming revenue. And mobile devices, and like, particularly Asian countries, South America, India, right? And that part of the world, I know it's not as big in American culture, right? Or NA culture, but in that part of the world, you know, FPS games are very, very big on mobile. PUBG Mobile, huge. Facebook Gaming had massive viewership on PUBG Mobile, and it's very niche, and like, you don't oftentimes get around to seeing that part of the gaming culture and gaming communities, but it's huge. So it makes a lot of sense for Overwatch to get onto the mobile market at some capacity.
There's a load of other bombshells as well, things like trying to increase the team size and how that didn't work out, and a lot of other issues that Overwatch faced. And we can talk about Overwatch League and also Overwatch 2. So we're going to be taking a look at some extracts from Jason Schreier's new book. This is Plain Ice, The Rise and Fall and the Future of Blizzard Entertainment. I highly recommend you buy this book. All we're going to look at here is some of the sections from the Overwatch world, right? And the bits with Jeff Kaplan and some elements of the leadership stuff from the Team 4, which is obviously the Overwatch team. This book, though, contains so much information about Blizzard. There's loads of stuff. I'm not going to spoil it. I do recommend you go and buy this. There is a link in the video description below. It's not a tracked link. This isn't some sort of like promo video or whatever. This isn't affiliate, none of that shit. It's just a link to Amazon down below. You can go and buy the book if you like. I do believe it's actually better for Jason if you go and buy this out of sort of your local bookstore as well. I would like the hardback copy of this, but actually
that's a great cover.
That's not available in the UK for a while, so I've had to settle for the Kindle version. But yeah, go and buy this book. So what I'm going to do, guys, is obviously I've been around the game for a while. I have been given a lot of information about Overwatch, about how we got to where we are. And I do think the book it's not too heavy on Overwatch details. I do think more stuff will come out in the future, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, what happens with all of that stuff. But I think let's begin, because enough of me talking crap. Let's take a look at this and let's see where we are and how we got to this situation and what is going on with Overwatch. Let's break it down. So we're not going to start with the very early days with Titan and how we got Overwatch and all of that. We're going to focus more on what happened to the lead up to Jeff leaving and I guess the birth of Overwatch 2 and how that moved forward. And also we will throw in a little bit of Overwatch League here. So the first place I'd like to start is here, and it is increasing the size of the team and why this was an issue. I think Bobby wanted to figure out ways to give more resources to the Overwatch team, said Millock. The Overwatch team didn't necessarily want more resources, they wanted less interference. The biggest point of contention was still the size of Team 4, which remained exponentially smaller than the teams behind rival shooters. Kotick still wanted to make it larger or create a second division.
But guys, the narrative in the Overwatch scene is that it's all Kotick's fault. This is what I'm saying, right? And I've got eviscerated from my takes saying that Team 4 was accountable. Look, here's the reality. Was Kotick's time at Activision Blizzard, should it have been over? Yes, I think everybody can agree on that. But if you look at the faults of Kotick and his MO, and you look at what happened with Overwatch, they're two polar opposite things. Bobby Kotick's MO, right, is to overproduce. They overproduce content. There's a new Call of Duty game every year, right? Every year there's a new Call of Duty game. Or new update, new whatever, right? That's his MO. And and it costs the quality of some of the IP. Warzone had a significant drop off in quality in Warzone 2. Luckily, Raven Studio is a smaller studio. They have, Raven Studio, basically, guys, Activision makes Warzone, right? They make Warzone, but Raven maintains it, essentially, is the relationship I believe they have. So when Activision and Infinity Ward had their way with Warzone 2, it was very different from Warzone 1. Raven Studios came in and started maintaining the game, and they slowly, in a year's time, reverted the game back to Warzone 1. So it got fixed in a good spot where people wanted, right? So, you know, again, that overproduction costs the quality of the IP in some circumstances. Overwatch's problem was completely different. Overwatch never produced anything. Never. I would say the last, god tier event that they did was the Blackwatch event. Storm Rising was super underwhelming in 2019. So when everyone's here saying it's Bobby Kotick's fault, Bobby Kotick, Team 4 was able to scapegoat. I'm not saying this iteration of Team 4, but and I'm not sitting here trying to hard flame Team 4. It's not fair to put all of the fault that happened with Overwatch 2 on Bobby Kotick. It's not. It's not fair to put it all, because again, there's pushback internally. Now, I think both people have a case as to why their way is the way. Ultimately, it's that it didn't work out and it is all behind us, but it is interesting to see. It's not accurate to sit here and scapegoat Bobby Kotick for everything that went wrong with Overwatch. The hero design and balance philosophy and lack of patches, that was Kaplan's team. It was. I love Jeff Kaplan. I think he's a great guy. I wish him the best. I wish that whole team the best. I hated what Jeff Goodman did to the game. I still hope he has a great life. You know, I wish him well. But I'm telling you, just look at the MOs and how Call of Duty performed and what they did, and look at Overwatch, and it's polar opposite. Kotick's baby was Call of Duty. So,
in the fashion of his massive Call of Duty empire. And even within the team, some developers agreed that Overwatch 2 needed more designers, artists, and engineers to...
Overwatch 2 needed more resources. It never got off... And to be fair, Overwatch 2 never had a chance because Kaplan and Team 4 wanted to keep their team small. It never had a chance. That's the reality. Kotick... People are going to hate me saying this, but it's true. Bobby Kotick was right. Overwatch 2 needed more developers. The results are the results. And if they were willing to put the resources in and Team 4 said no, that's on them. It is.
Execute on Kaplan's vision. Newcomers were stunned when they learned that a single person might be responsible for a feature that would typically require dozens of people. So that sounds crazy, right?
It is crazy.
There's a lot of things going on at this point in time. I think one of the things I'll break down in a second.
But at the same time, you also understand where Team 4 is coming from when you look at okay, look at the lawsuits that came out. Look at the culture of the developer workspace. The alleged culture, I guess, because we know some things happen, but I don't think, guys, I don't think that I don't think we ever got the details on everything that went on. I understand where Kaplan's coming from here too, where it's like, hey, look at the fucking culture with your Activision side of things. We don't want that culture at Team 4. We don't want that to happen. So this is why I'm saying it was just doomed to fail from the beginning.
Encapsulate that. But if you think about it,
Makes
right,
sense.
you've got Overwatch League,
It makes
you've
sense.
got adding content to the live game, you've got, you still need to make heroes.
But I'm so
You've got
aquatic
Overwatch
on this
PvE
one.
development. You've got tons of stuff going on, and the scope is increasing. Now, if you
Because like, you either make the game or you don't.
guys read the history of Titan, I've covered this in a video as well, but just to give a very quick summary of that. The reason why that game fell apart is there was too much going on, and it almost feels like Overwatch 2 was maybe falling into that direction. It didn't have that laser-focused design sort of philosophy that Overwatch had. It was just a team-based shooter. Let's go, with heroes in, and we're going to make game modes. That was it. There was none of the extra stuff. Titan had crazy stuff like you could drive cars around, and in the day you had this whole like Sims experience, and there was a job system, and yeah, there was just so much stuff going on in that game. It was crazy, and it kind of felt like Overwatch 2 was going down that path. Now, why would people like Ray Grisco, like Jeff Kaplan, resist actually increasing the team size? Well, the reason why is a lot of the best work at Blizzard was completed by smaller teams. Now, you look at games like World of Warcraft, you look at Wrath of the Lich King, that wasn't made by the number of developers that are currently working on WoW, yet it's widely seen as the best WoW expansion. Look at Hearthstone, that was made by a handful of people. Look how popular that was.
Yeah.
Look at Overwatch, again, it was made by a much smaller team.
And it makes
laser
sense.
focused and driven, and what they produced was a world-beating game.
There's good reasoning on both sides. There's good reasoning on both sides. There is. So like, I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, it's all Kaplan's fault. Like, this was doomed. Like, this was bound to happen. There was tensions building of this kind of conflict for many years at ATVI, and Overwatch 2 just happened to be the implosion,
Game. That's the kind of thing I think Jeff and the team wanted to capture. They did not want to become a massive studio that's just pumping out cosmetics. It becomes quite clear the reason why Jeff left. So what about Ray Grisco and Jeff when it comes to increasing the team size? Well, this is what was said. Kaplan and Ray Grisco, who was now the Overwatch's executive producer, believed that expanding too much would ruin the culture, which was one of the main reasons they'd been able to develop Overwatch so efficiently. Kaplan would personally onboard staff and like to know every single person on his team.
Efficiently? They barely put out fucking patches. What do you mean efficiently? Listen, Overwatch 1 was anything but efficient. It was deficient. Like, the Overwatch 1's lack of efficiency is what hurt the game more than anything. Efficiently developed. That's just not true. That's not true.
By 2018, they had crossed 150 people, but they refused to grow to the scale Kotick wanted, saying they didn't want to repeat the mistakes they'd made on previous projects like Titan.
Now that
Plus,
can make sense.
they argued it would destroy morale if half the team got to incubate cool new stuff, while the other half had to stay behind and update the first game.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. You're getting paid to do your job. Show up and do it, or don't. I don't get. I think that's BS. I'm sorry. I think that's total BS. I get passion matters. I do, but there was still a lot of passion in Overwatch 1. Look at there was more passion in the PvP of Overwatch 1 than in the PvP of Overwatch 2. So what are we talking about here? Come on, stop. That's cope. That's complete cope. Strip away the BS. No siree. Nope.
Quietly, the developers scoffed that they didn't want Overwatch to transform into a soulless machine like Call of Duty. Later, some of the members of the Overwatch development team would...
We don't want Overwatch to transform into a soulless machine like Call of Duty, and yet we're still in 5v5. The most autopilot game format ever. I just come on, guys. Come on.
come to resent the Overwatch League, viewing it as an unnecessary distraction that had been forced upon them. So, there's a lot to take away from this, isn't there? I mean, you've got the Overwatch League, which was viewed as like a bit of an issue. It was a distraction that they didn't need. However, we will go on in the section when we do talk about the Overwatch League in this video that initially they were kind of for it, or at least the majority of developers were, because it was almost like a stamp of approval. They'd rescued this game from Titan, they'd made a billion-dollar franchise, and now they've got potentially a massive esports league. Like, it was like they were winning and winning and winning, and it was fun to design things like the new team icons and all of that stuff, and the branding for the teams. But obviously, as time went on, they realized it was a massive drain, and as that extract states there, they were not too happy about it. So what's this issue here with increasing the team size? Well, it's this issue of culture. It's this issue, again, like I went over, was essentially, you know, you've got a group of people working together and you've made some great stuff. You want to keep that team together.
Sure.
You want to slowly grow it with
and
the
that
best
does
people
make
you can
sense.
find in
That
the
does
industry.
make sense.
Not just ram a ton of people in and go, okay, we've now got an extra 100 developers that are going to work on PvE. But they might not be up to your caliber. They might not be the developers that you want, or they're just not bought into that type of culture they were building.
And listen, it probably won't be perfect. It won't be. But like, if you're committed, if you've made the choice, whether you like it or not, if you've made the choice to make a new game, you've got to commit to it, because you've made that commitment. You've made that commitment. You've got to try. That's where my mind's at. I think Kotick was right on this. But I'm also not going to be so naive as to dismiss Jeff's points either, where it's like, hey, like, you know, that makes sense. You are not wrong. It's an issue of weight of importance. And the reality is, I mean, Overwatch 2 laid a goose egg because the team didn't expand. It laid an absolute goose egg. It looked like Kentucky football, right? Goose egg. Shout out to my Cats beating Ole Miss, though. Vandy this weekend. So, you know, it's tough. Hindsight's 20/20, right? You live and you learn. And this is why, like, I'm not coming at this from a malice, approach of malice. You live and you learn. That's life. That is life. It's an interesting study, and there's a lot to learn from it, you know?
And to see why they were resistant to this. Obviously, as this was all playing out, us as players of the game sitting there going, where the fuck are the updates? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but that's what we're doing, right? We're like, what's going on, guys? You know, I always say, I remember when I went to Irvine, it was 2020, actually. I think I might have said 2019 in a recent video. That's incorrect. It was 2020, because I literally got the last flight out before COVID locked everything down. And yeah, Jeff basically told me there, like, hey, there's going to be no more heroes. This is it. Echo's the last hero, and yeah, we're working on Overwatch 2. So yeah, and I'm thinking, holy shit, the game's going to be super close to launch. Of course, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But what Jeff was working on was the same thing he was working on when they were making Overwatch. It was almost like they're working on a game in a bubble, getting ready for that big launch where everything is polished and super ready to go. And of course, that led to its own issues. So you can kind of see here, this does elaborate a bit more on why Jeff and Ray, because Ray was like running the show and Jeff was the game director, right, at this time. And they were like resistant to it because they knew what created the magic of the first game and they wanted to replicate that again, but even more, you know, and make Overwatch 2 even better than what Overwatch 1 was. So what about the team itself at that time? Well, this gives a highlight to the culture of the team. It shines a light, I guess, behind the curtain. Blizzard's leadership, already frustrated by Activision's policies like stack ranking, argued that bringing on new people came with plenty of its own costs. Senior staff on Overwatch spoke with the shorthand of people who had been teammates for a decade. It would take months, if not years, for new hires to acclimate. Interviews, onboarding, and training took days away from Overwatch leads who would otherwise be contributing to the game. The more people we added, the more difficult it became, said animator Michael Bianclana. Apologies, Michael, I've probably destroyed your name there, but apologies. The more people we added, the more difficult it became. I've just read that, but I've read it again. The larger the team, the bigger the budget, which meant that revenue would have to scale up to match. And there was a persistent fear that Kotick's ultimate goal was to annualize the franchise. Nobody at Blizzard wanted to see Overwatch go the way of Guitar Hero.
And that makes sense, too, by the way. It makes sense. And that being said, I don't know if Overwatch would go the direction of Guitar Hero. That fear makes sense. Again, there's valid criticism on both sides. And like, I really want to hammer this point home too. It's like, you know, internally at Blizzard, like there clearly was trust issues. And can you blame them? You know, with what ended up coming out about hiring at Activision, right? Can you blame them? Look, I think that, again, there's 10 years of this leading up to that moment. Right, and Overwatch 2 just happened to be the collateral. So it's sad to hear that. I think ultimately, if you choose to make Overwatch 2, you've made that commitment at this point. Now, I will agree with the Blizzard devs. Overwatch 2 never should have happened. Never. There's no need for it. It's just Overwatch. There is no League of Legends 2. There's not. There is no World of Warcraft 2. There's expansions, and that can be how you annualize things, right? But it's just kind of unfortunate. It's interesting to hear all this stuff. And listen, there's valid points everywhere. There's valid points everywhere. And it's unfortunate that the outcome was what it was. You know.
So again, this gives you a couple of insights here. The first one is you've got a team that's working together for so long. They've got their own almost shorthand, right? They've got their own insights.
But to be fair as well, like the Team 4 devs at the time, they did not understand the shooter game they made. There was a fundamental lack of understanding of every matchup, how the game flowed, how things work. And you could see it in the way that these heroes came out. Whether Overwatch 2 happened or not, the game would have kept declining because they did not tackle problematic characters they put in the game. They just didn't. So
they've got their own ways of working. They just know each other. They know if they do X thing, then developer will do Y thing. They know that, right? And they know that certain developer could be trusted with a certain thing or the type of workload they could take on, whereas bringing new hires...
Every dynasty comes to an end. Every dynasty.
To even get to a point of being able to work on the game, which does highlight an issue with potentially it wasn't built or they didn't have systems in place to bring people on board fast, which probably they should have had. But again, you can see why they resisted that because of this whole culture thing and, you know, we made Overwatch and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. You can use this as a negative against them and say, like, you know, they thought they were better than everyone and that resulted in them not scaling up like they should have done. But it's difficult, right? There's a lot going on there. And again, the book doesn't go into too much detail on that. And
look, it's difficult, but the answer is that they should have scaled up. That's the bottom line. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if you tell me about how people felt about it or whatever. If you make the commitment and go with Overwatch 2, you don't have a choice. You've got to scale up. Kotick was right on this one. He was. He just was. You know, I'm not saying the sentiment's wrong for people who didn't want it to scale, but later, the PvE mission I played in 2023 was the exact same as it was when I played it in 2019. You needed to scale up. You needed to scale up. It is what it is.
The anecdotes I've heard of various people, again, are like, yeah, you hear things like X developer didn't like this, or this feature
it would have been
worked on,
better if it was Call of
this
Duty.
developer, and that developer
Somehow.
didn't know, and they were working on other things, and it's like, yeah, you know, or somebody was working on a passion project, maybe putting a bit too much time into that, and they should have been working on something else. But then if there was another developer that could be working on that, you know, it wouldn't matter. So
Yeah, they
there's
took
loads of
chests
stuff
out.
that
I
I've heard
forgot
over the
about
years, and as I say, I'm sure bits and pieces of that will come out. But the idea was to keep a very laser-focused team of basically the best developers just making exactly what they should be making. The problem is it's taking them arguably too long to do that. And the other thing is this idea of becoming Guitar Hero, or basically chasing
fumbled
profits,
Overwatch 1.
We know this was the case for a long time. Again, this
happens, but
I'm not going to leak sources. I'm not going to say names or anything like that. But I know for a fact that senior members in the Overwatch team were really pissed off with the interference from Activision, telling them, we need this, we need that. We need more monetization. We need this in the game. Why are you not doing that? I need so-and-so to come into a meeting with me now. When that person needed to be working on something with Overwatch, they go into a meeting, they get told they need to add something to the game. They don't want to add to the game because it'll be some bullshit like some forced promo event or whatever. They're like, this is crap. I want to go back to working on what I'm working on. They come out a bit demoralized and it pisses them off. You ended up with senior members like Chaco and Jeff Kaplan, literally like that's all they're doing. They're just in these meetings. They basically want to tell the Activision guys to piss off, let's work on the game. But they're saying like, where's the monetization? Where's the updates? What are you doing? And you can understand in some ways, but this was causing them to basically stall. And it was a big issue. But as I say, you're going to have to take my word for that, guys. I'm not going to leak sources for any of that. I'm sure in future that will come out.
And by the way, I 110% believe what he's saying here. 100%. I 110% believe in what he's saying here. I think Silos is a very credible source on that. And I do feel for Kaplan and those guys. But here's the reality, guys. It's not 2008 anymore. You're not making WoW where you can kind of loosey-goosey dick around and do whatever you want. Activism being scummy and greedy suits, shocker. See, I'm not sure if that's what that is. That's called running a business, guys. You got to keep the lights on. Now, I do think Activision Blizzard takes it too far. I do. But it's not 2008. You've got a product that, you know, they might think that they want to go work on the game, but they didn't even think the game was live service. The reality is this iteration of Team 4, they were past their prime. And it's not because they were bad, though they were bad at some places, right? But the industry changed. The world changed. The world in general, forget gaming, moved to higher volume, shorter form content. You've seen a huge switch from that in multiple fields. Look at the cable industry from 2000 to 2010, 2015 even. It fell apart. Why? Platforms like YouTube came out with shorter form, organic content for everybody to put out. Look at games like Roblox. Look at games like Fortnite, UEFN. Look at Minecraft, right? A lot changed very, very quickly. And that iteration of Team 4, I think, was built for the era of like 2005 to 2015, 16, 17, 18. 2018, everything changed with Fortnite. Like that business practice was great from 2000 to 2015, 16, 17. And those people were stellar in that era. I'm not trying to take away from it. But they did not understand the modern industry. Well, I'm not going to say they didn't understand it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it, right? And I get why. You've done it a certain way for a very, very long time. And they still could be successful that way. But that's just not what Overwatch became. Overwatch could have been Fortnite. It really was. And I'm not saying it should be item shop, getting the gritty and, you know, whatever, right? But, you know, like the reality is like their vision, in my opinion, for what game development should be and like what it is, was outdated and wrong. That being said, I'm sure Activision also pushed things too far. Again, I think it's a bit of both. I don't think it's black and white. I think it's a lot of shades of gray, and I do feel for both parties on that. And there's nothing you can do about that. That's just life. That's the times, you know. It is what it is there.
Kind of hoping that would come out in this book, but I guess it wasn't. It's not a book on Overwatch, right? It's a book on Blizzard. And as I say, it's got fantastic content on Blizzard, so do go and buy it and check it out. It's really, really good. If you've got any interest on Blizzard,
I'm not claiming to have all the answers either, by the way.
So this culminated with Jeff in 2019, basically appearing at BlizzCon and telling the world what Overwatch 2 is going to be, and this is what the book says in regards to that. Later, Jeff Kaplan took to the stage to announce Overwatch 2, promising that it would feature story missions across the world from Toronto to Paris, which would allow players to level up and customize their heroes. The big focus, as Kaplan had always envisioned with his crawl, walk, run mantra, would be player versus environment, or PvE, in which players would be able to fight computer-controlled enemies. Fans had grown obsessed with the characters in the world of Overwatch with its bright aesthetics and unabashed optimism. But most of that story had been told outside the game in supplemental materials like comics and those stellar short films or animated shorts. Now, that would change. So yeah, the reason why I've put this section in is because this, again, will go into the reason why we see why Jeff ultimately walks away, is Jeff is telling the player base, the world, what we are going to do. And then he's getting told, you're not going to do that, you're doing something else. And all of this friction back and forth with Activision trying to pressure them to do different things.
It was destined to fail.
Increase monetization.
And let me make my, to be clear about my opinion, I do think this was a two-way street. I think it was a two-way street, and you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole here. The round hole is Blizzard, and the square peg is what Activision wants. It never was going to work, ever. It just wasn't going to happen. So I do feel for Team 4 on that one, and I think it is important to note.
That stuff, it reached a head. So there's been discussion, why did Jeff leave Blizzard? You know, we're thinking this is the era of all the sexual harassment issues at Blizzard. Could Jeff have been implicated in all that? I mean, I'll categorically tell you guys.
I mean, listen, I don't look. Jeff Kaplan was at Blizzard for 19 years, guys. 19 years. 19 years at the same company. You know, that's a long time. That never happens. Maybe it was just time. You know? Can you blame him? I don't. You know, I still respect, like, even Jeff Goodman, who I think was a horrible lead hero designer. I don't think anybody can make the case that Jeff Goodman did a good job designing heroes post-Overwatch launch, post-Ana. But, you know, he was there for a long time, too. Probably just needed a change. Not a bad dude. Not a bad dude. So, you know, they gave a lot. I think it's just time. That's a long time.
Obviously, I'm just some dickhead on the internet throwing crap out. You know, you can't just take my word for it. Instead, I want to show you this section from the book because this is from Rachel Day. She was the lead VFX artist on Overwatch, and she now works for Bonfire Studios. Obviously, has done fantastic work on Overwatch, and I think on Diablo as well, and possibly on Warcraft Rumble, I think, maybe. But look at what she says. The Overwatch team is the kind of development experience that you only get once, said Day. The alignment, that cooperation, that true magic. Early in development, Kaplan sat down Day and a few other women on the team and told them to come to him if they ever felt uncomfortable. He made it very welcome. An open space, she said. In the beginning of 2014, when Day started, Overwatch was just a few basic prototypes and half-finished characters. By the end of the year, they prepared to reveal the game at BlizzCon. They built a full demo with a dozen heroes that players would be able to take into 6-on-6 combat. No game at Blizzard had coalesced that quickly since the 1990s. So I think that sums up Jeff's character there in regards to those issues. But I think what's interesting here is I actually know from Rachel herself. I remember her telling me the rate, the speed at which they were generating and making heroes. I think I can't entirely remember the heroes, but I know Torb was involved in this. Torb and a couple of other heroes were basically made in a day. It's like they made them in a day. They were in the game. Obviously, they didn't have the models or whatever, but their kit was there. They were ready to go. They were chucked in the game within a day, and then they were ready to go. And that is the type of, like, development, I guess, like, focus they were looking to recapture with Overwatch 2 to kind of do it all over again. But yeah. I guess the issue was the team just couldn't be... It was not big enough, and there was no way they could feasibly do it in any kind of time frame. This, you know, we're not in the era where you can take 5-6 years to make a game now. You had to turn the games around pretty quickly, and yeah, I think that just led to an issue. So Jeff leaves, and this is what the book says here, and I can add my flavor to this as well. So in the spring of 2021, Jeff Kaplan resigned from Blizzard, as did production director Julie Humphreys, who I now believe she's actually one of the heads at Disney in their production department. They were followed a few months later by executive producer Chaco Soni, who had taken over from Ray Grisco, leaving a huge leadership void on the Overwatch team. On his way out, Kaplan urged his staff not to let business realities overwhelm their creativity. Now, before I go on here, I will say this was the main focus of Jeff. I've had a lot of conversations with Jeff over the years, and I remember quite a few conversations. I remember conversations in and around, it was actually one of the Overwatch League finals, and he did not care about the business element of games, which might sound crazy, but you've got to think this was Blizzard, and it's not like they didn't have enough money to make things happen. And it was almost like the mantra, the philosophy was, if you let the best do what they need to do, you let them cook, they will give you greatness. And it's been proven at Blizzard time and time again that that worked. The problem is when the business people start coming in and start forcing game decisions because of cost, then that curtails any kind of creativity that the creative individuals might have who don't care about budget, right? And this was a problem. And so you had essentially a game director who didn't really care about the business of a game, being forced to care about the business of a game and getting told things couldn't happen because it wasn't financially feasible. That becomes a problem. And that's an issue, right? And that's not a world they wanted to work in at that time. So that was, again, one of the issues that led to this whole problem. Anyway, this is really interesting as well. So on his way out, Kaplan urged his staff not to let business realities overwhelm their creativity. To a group of designers, he shared a video from the singer David Bowie on pushing boundaries in art. I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations, Bowie said in the video. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little out of your depth, and when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. And I'll show you this video. I'll show you it at the end of this video with a little bit more sort of, I guess, behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, stay tuned for that. It's all about Overwatch League. So, oh dear me. So, now, it was kind of interesting to me because I've seen some chatter online. Now, people weren't actually aware that it was Nate Nanza's idea and it was not Bobby Kotick's idea. Again, there's more information than what I'm going to show you here in the book. So I do recommend going and get the book, but I'll just go over this because it's crazy. So Kotick's esports turnaround could prove beneficial for Blizzard's own initiatives.
No, I got nothing to say about him leaving. I don't blame him. I mean, look, it's art, right? It's not that simple to make, and that's where I'm not going to claim to be like they were wrong. They're all this, I'm not going to do that because art's subjective, man, and it's to give Blizzard credit on the art side of things. Like they're unrivaled, and like I said, like I think that this was just a boiling point that was gonna hit somewhere, and it happened to hit Overwatch 2. I can't blame Team 4. I can't blame Activision. One of you has peanut butter, the other has chocolate, and sometimes when you trip and fall and spill all over each other, you don't get the idea of a Reese's cup. Sometimes it's just a fucking mess. So yeah, it is what it is. A bummer, but that's life. Nobody bats 1,000. Nobody. But what you can do is you can get back up and try again. And that's where, while I do disagree with the direction Team 4's gone with Overwatch 2, I do give them props for getting back up and trying,
Because he basically didn't like esports, but now he did. In the summer of 2016, Nanza and his team met with Activision's executives to formally pitch what they were calling the Overwatch League. Kotick loved the idea so much, he told Blizzard's staff he didn't want to work with the NBA or any other external partner. He wanted them to do it themselves, using Activision's marketing muscle to create the NFL of video games. Then Kotick dropped another bombshell. Nanza had originally planned to sell teams for $250,000 each, which seemed like an unrealistic goal to his colleagues, given the lack of substantial money in esports. But he thought a city-based model could generate enough revenue to justify it. Because remember, they were trying to sell tickets, right? And you can generate a lot of tickets. You don't need that many people, a lot of revenue through tickets. You don't need that many people in a venue. If you keep constantly getting them in a venue, even if it's like a few hundred in a venue, keep getting them in, you will generate a lot of money. That was the idea, essentially. Anyway, Kotick said they should aim bigger, 20 million per fan franchise. Everyone was shocked. They were going to charge potential owners 20 million to buy an Overwatch League team. Most of the world didn't know what Overwatch even was, but Kotick wanted to recruit billionaires who already own traditional sports teams that could bring their expertise to this project. Now, this is insane.
Now, listen. Overwatch League was a good idea. A $20 million buy-in was not a good idea. The cost.
Overwatch, anybody who knew anything about esports, straight away, you're like, Overwatch isn't watchable unless you know what's going on in the game. Now, at the time, had a big player base, right? And even if you could capture 5-10% of that player base into watching the game, would have been sustainable. They didn't, though. And that's never the conversion rate you get for esports. It's super low. It's like 1% if you're lucky. But the game is very difficult to watch, yeah? It's not like you're watching Counter-Strike. I always use Counter-Strike as an esports example because it's man with... I'm choking to death. Apologies. I'll leave that in because whatever. Professional YouTuber. But in oh god, hello camera. But in Counter-Strike, it's man with a gun shooting another man with a gun or throwing a grenade, and you've got to disarm a bomb, right? Unless you're playing hostage, but no one plays that.
Listen, 250k worked. Even like $1 million or $2 million would have worked. 20 is ludicrous. Ludicrous.
So it's like, you know what's going on. Even StarCraft 2, maybe a better example, right? You can see Red Army versus Blue Army. You kind of know what's going on. You don't know the ins and outs of it, but you can see bigger army, smaller army.
And also, by the way, like, I'm not buying that I don't know what's going on with Overwatch shit. I'm not. Like, I know it's a more complicated game, but you knew a big moment when you saw it.
Right, although, maybe Micro is a bit better for the other team, and yeah, maybe not the best example. But Overwatch was just like, we don't know what's going on the screen. Too much stuff. So really, it was never going to be a massive esport. And I, again, know, like, I'm not going to drop names here, but I think it's quite easy to work out who this would be. They never wanted this artificial league. They wanted a grassroots development of the game, which, if you go way back to Alienware monthly melees, and even before that, right, it was organically growing and the viewership was good, right? This was something that was competing with bigger esports, right? And it was growing. It would have sustained itself. Yeah. Overwatch League thrust it into the limelight. Everything had to work straight away, and the game was never ever really going to. It just was not going to sustain that. And I do believe the developers at the time they would have loved to support a grassroots system with updates. It wouldn't have been as it wouldn't have been like Overwatch League, like the replay viewer. In fact, the replay viewer, again, this was shown to me by one of the lead engineers at the time, back in 2018, in the Burbank Arena. And I was like, are you joking me? This is in the game already? They're like, no, it's just in the Overwatch League client. It's not in the game. It actually took a very long time for that to get put into the live game. But it was essentially what we got in the live game. And one of the reasons why it wasn't getting added to the game is because there were some elements of polish that those devs at the time were not happy with, and they wanted it to basically look a bit better. But it was functional. It would have worked, and that could have been the game a long time before it got added to the game. So, there's a lot of back and forth here. But honestly, I was astounded to see that. I could not believe it. It was one of those moments where I was like, holy shit, this is a thing you guys have got. Why can't I use this? I'd love to use it, right? Remember, this is back in 2018. Again, I'm not going to name any names there, but, a lot of these people have since moved on a long, long time ago. So, yeah, I mean, good Lord. So what did the devs actually think here? Now, initially, they liked Overwatch League because, like I said a bit earlier on in the video, it was that stamp of like, hey, we've actually made it. This is like a stamp of approval. For the people who had made Overwatch, the Overwatch League was a surreal experience. A few years earlier, Jeff Kaplan and his team had been reeling from the cancellation of Titan, the biggest failure in Blizzard's history, which Kaplan told one interviewer had impacted him on a deep and profound way. Now, their creation was the center of a massive initiative that could change the way the world thought about esports. Many of the artists and programmers who worked on Overwatch were happy to work on the Overwatch League. They created brands, designed team logos, and even built tools like an in-game replay viewer that would let Overwatch players watch matches from any angle. But soon it became clear that Team 4 had too much work to do. Kaplan's team needed to simultaneously 1. Help out with features and art for the Overwatch League, 2. Develop the sequel, and 3. Create new heroes and updates for Overwatch, which had almost certainly turned into a live service game over the previous 2 years. So, again, I'll add some of my flavour to this. Overwatch was always a live service game. They just never realised it was a live service game. Now, the devs did plan a ton of features. If you go back, right, again, this is kind of like some of the dark arts of content creation back in the day. Not really.
Like old school Team 4 did not see it as a live service game, even though that's what it was. They didn't understand what they created. And honestly, that is a little bit of a testament to just how good what it was they made. It was so good, they didn't even fucking get it.
Really, it doesn't really apply anymore, but there was a very active data mining scene for Overwatch, right? And there was a truce between the data miners and the devs. Basically, we won't change our encryption keys if you guys just stop leaking everything, right? Now, obviously, a lot of stuff got leaked, a lot of stuff came out, and all of this. But you could see things were worked on well in advance. Some of the seasonal events were there for like a long, long time. So they had planned for a lot of stuff. They had planned for Overwatch to launch. They had planned for multiple new heroes. They had planned for seasonal events with different types of cosmetics, different, things like Lucio Ball. We knew about that for a while before that even happened. So all these things were planned. So they did actually plan a game which was like a live service game. Because you got to think, Blizzard have always updated their games, right? Warcraft is probably the only like live service that they've had. WoW, I'm talking about here, because it was pay monthly. People are constantly invested. They need to constantly update the game, right? I know it's an MMO, so it's not technically a live service in what we see as a live service game now. But Overwatch was always designed to have content. So I don't think it's fair to say Overwatch, they didn't realize it was a live service game, because they did. It wasn't a live service game that would go forever, because they wanted to support it for a year or maybe 2, and then they're working on Overwatch 2, and then we come back in a few more years, you get Overwatch 2, and it's even bigger, right? That's kind of what the plan was, and it didn't really happen like that, did it? But that was the plan. So yeah, don't kind of believe the hype when people go, they didn't realize it was a live service game. They did, but they didn't realize at the time I'm not going to name anybody here, but basically they didn't realize at the time that games like Fortnite were rising, and other games, even like with the Apex Legends when that launched,
there's no way to know. And there's no way to know until you get there.
They were launching with, they're adding content to the game constantly.
Like, again, Overwatch changed everything. Oh, I say this all the time. Overwatch was the gateway game from the old era of gaming to new generation games. Overwatch was the divider. It was the Mississippi River in the United States between the East and West Coast, right? Where every game that came out before Overwatch was old generation, but every game that came out after it was new generation. You had PUBG. You had Fortnite, right? You then had Valorant. Like, Overwatch was the gateway game to the live service future. And that, like, after Overwatch, I know people like to credit Fortnite, but Overwatch walked so Fortnite could run. Overwatch walked so Fortnite could run. And boy, did it. Boy, did it.
And Overwatch was drastically falling behind in this world.
PUBG was after
a massive
Overwatch,
audience.
yeah.
It was not sort of giving them the goods, basically, and they were too like focused on working on Overwatch 2, and it just got eroded away. And I've had some frank conversations with people, and they basically told me, we're not just making updates for the sake of it. You know, we're going to make something great. And that's, yeah. And I was really frustrated because, you know, at the time, think about it, I'm thinking, shit, I'm seeing Fortnite on the rise. I'm like, but Overwatch is a better game than Fortnite, in my opinion. What we need to do, guys, is kind of just add content, not bad content, but there'll be clever ways of adding content, different seasonal events. Because you guys,
and by the way, that's where Activision was right. Like, this is where Activision's side of things were right, in my opinion. And again, hindsight's 2020, so I'm not going to sit there. Let me be crystal clear about what I'm saying. I'm not sitting here saying, see, I called it the whole time. I have all the answers. That's not what I'm saying at all. But obviously, in hindsight, and I think, you know, anyone who's boots on the ground, like, that's where the Activision side of things were right. Like, it would have been better for Overwatch to just keep cranking out shit like a Call of Duty. Crank out the DLCs. Crank out the events. Charge $5 for them, $10 for them. But it's content. You know, and like that's where Overwatch should have scaled up. And like, I don't think you need the original Team 4 culture to maintain that. You don't. You just need people who can make shit. That's good. So, you know, I think it's weird.
When we had repetitive seasonal events, it was super annoying. It was like, oh,
yeah, it was really annoying. It was really bad.
Stuff, just a slightly different.
They
thing.
needed to upscale.
Yeah, crap, guys. You know, that was a problem because we were used to the innovation and we just weren't getting it because it was being poured into Overwatch 2 PvE, which we ended up not getting anyway. It's all about the launch of Overwatch 2. Okay, let's break this down. So, Overwatch 2 came out on October the 4th, 2022. It was free to play. And also, actually, the game was free to play, not free to play, free to play, not free to play, and this caused a shitload of problems. And the devs worked on free to play for fucking ages, and then Bobby didn't want it. He wanted to go back to basically selling the game, and then decided he wanted to go back to free to play in a different style of free to play. It was crazy. Honestly, I hope that comes out because everything I've been sent about that and the details, it's just frigging crazy.
I'm sure it
mental.
was.
It was actually mental because people think like the likes of Jeff and that team were resistant to free to play. They weren't. But they wanted to do it in a certain way, and then they got approval to do that, and then they started working on it, and they got told they couldn't. It's just terrible. Actually terrible. But anyway, in the weeks that followed, players were stunned by what
I'm sure that
exorbitant microtransaction prices skins for characters that could cost upwards of $20 and pricey bundles like Halloween-themed pack that charged $40 for 4 outfits. Most controversially, given what Kaplan had promised for the first Overwatch years earlier, some of the game's heroes were unavailable when you started playing. To unlock them, you would either play a ton of matches or pay to speed up the process. Now, I won't put this quote on the screen because we've this quote I've literally covered to death over years and years and years, but it was from Walter Kong, the GM of Overwatch, basically saying like, yeah, you know, the reason why we decided to put heroes behind the paywall is because they're the highest engagement thing we've got. So yeah, that's why we did it. Basically, we know people will buy the heroes, so let's sell them the heroes. That's what they were trying to do. It was bullshit. Like, obviously this has been repealed and got rid of.
Shout out to Team 4 for getting rid of that.
I don't know whether it was because they realized it was causing so much damage to the game, or they just wanted to get a PR win, or, you know, they realized if people got access to the heroes and they buy more skins. I don't know. It's probably that, to be honest. But yeah, it was just, it was actually horrid. It's all about the quality of Overwatch 2. Now, it was mean to death. This is just Overwatch 1.5. What's going on, guys? I mean, all you've done is it's 5v5 and we've got a new game mode.
Overwatch 0.5.
Overwatch was laughed at for a long time for not having new game modes. Yet they had tons of game modes in development. Push was in development for a long time. I'm not saying it's a great game mode, but it's a new game mode, right? I mean, I've slammed Clash recently going, I don't think this is a great game mode. But
like, honestly, I don't mind Push that much. I know it has its flaws. I don't mind it. I don't mind Flashpoint. I think Flashpoint was actually really good, aside from that one thing where you can spawn and have the point go diagonally across the map, which is bad. But yeah, no, I think the others were fine. Clash is shit, but
it's a game mode and there's something to play, right? But we've had subsequent new game modes in Overwatch 2 at least. But this explains why Overwatch 2 was literally Overwatch just with a free-to-play skin around it. Because look at this. That's because it was. Fans and critics couldn't understand why the game was pegged as a sequel when the gameplay and visuals felt identical to the first Overwatch. Everyone said, you worked for 6 years on this. Said the person, no, we worked for 1 year on this. We spent those other years on all the PvE stuff. So there you go. They literally turned around Overwatch 2 in a year, which I think you can tell was totally the case. You know, we had a different UI, a bland UI that had loads of features missing. We had stuff removed from the game. Yes, the game did have a new engine, which was I won't go into too much detail about the engine, but as far as I was aware, the Overwatch engine was not designed for PvE. The Overwatch 2 engine was basically designed for PvE, and the hilarious thing now is they don't do any PvE. So there's a lot of engine development there, which doesn't really have much use. You might see them using it in things like limited time events and stuff like that, but it doesn't really have much use. So a ton of development time was kind of, I guess, wasted on that, given what we know now. But yeah, I think that's just an interesting point to bring up. So yeah, it was a year in development, which I don't think anybody is surprised by that. There's also a mobile development version of Overwatch. Well, there's a mobile game, I should say, in development for Overwatch. This isn't a new game. This isn't like a different take. It's literally Overwatch, just playable on Android and iOS. It's just like Call of Duty Mobile. In fact, it is basically based on Call of Duty Mobile. But we've got confirmation here anyway. So Overwatch was led by Walter Kong, who oversaw the release of regular heroes and content for Overwatch 2, as well as new projects like a mobile version of the franchise. So, like I said, there is a mobile version of Overwatch coming at some point. I don't know when that will launch, but it will be coming out.
It should. Simply because it'd be good for the game.
I think quite a bit of development has gone into this, from what I understand. But again, like, I mean, that could just result in them cancelling it. I don't know what Blizzard are like, but I know that Call of Duty Mobile does quite well.
Yeah.
So given the amount of, I guess, manpower required to sort of run the show, so I think they're just thinking, let's do the same for Overwatch, which, yeah, comes as no surprise. But again, like, my issue with Overwatch is I want to see new experiences with Overwatch, and they are working on new experiences. I don't have any information as to what they could be, but they are working on new experiences. And yeah, I kind of want to see what they can cook, but I don't know. So what about rebooting Overwatch, right? This was a question that I asked and answered last year, the year before, maybe the year before that, whenever it was. Basically, I was really perplexed why we've got... I mean, the Overwatch 2 we've got doesn't warrant the 2. It is just Overwatch, yeah? I know it's 5v5 and whatever, but it's just Overwatch, right?
It's worse.
It should have been Overwatch 2.0. It should have been like Overwatch Reborn. Overwatch, you know, for the modern era, right? Which basically is just making it free to play. The problem was they invested so much into the branding for Overwatch 2 and the marketing campaigns and whatever. It's like they just kind of stuck with it. And it became this meme of like, well, it's not even this isn't even a sequel. It's just Overwatch with content. And now, given what we know and what's happened, a wholesale cancellation of PvE, which is the point of Overwatch 2, we're just now back in the world of Overwatch 1 with 3 heroes a year, and yeah, skins and cosmetics being added to the game, and okay seasonal events every now and again, and limited time modes. That's basically what we've got. And then ongoing development of things like competitive and all the associated stuff with that. That's what we've got. That's literally Overwatch 1, just with updates. Now, Mike Ybarra, I think this guy's an absolute dickhead, to be honest, right? There's an entire section in this book that just rips him apart, and rightfully so. But again, at the time, I actually was given... I was told about this straight away as it happened. So he held what's called a town hall meeting. So basically just gets everybody together in the company. And he was shitting on people who were working in departments that were essential to Blizzard, but implying like they were just like throwaway positions, like no one wants those positions. Things like Q&A, right? Yeah, these people are just like, whatever, you know, that's just a stepping stone to a different department, which it might be. But there were people who were like 10 years plus working in Q&A who were experts in their field. And he's literally telling them that they're worthless.
I think instead of Q&A, I think he's meaning QA as in quality assurance, like bug testing, get quick done. It's pretty damn important.
He also made insane comments like the executives at Blizzard didn't get paid a lot. They got paid fucking millions. They got millions, like 10 million, 20 million, oh well, 12 million. Just crazed amounts of money because they're executives of a billion, multi-billion dollar company. So they're getting tons of money. So he was just a twat, basically. But as I said, I was told at the time when this happened, and it was shocking. Shocking. But anyway, this is what Mike Ybarra said. Right, quite interesting. Mike Ybarra, too, was asked to leave Blizzard after 2.5 years at the wheel. His policies have been broadly unpopular with staff, and that disastrous February the 2023, I should say, meeting still hung over him. But he had still hoped to be the company's president for years to come. Someone will drag me out of Blizzard, he told Bloomberg at BlizzCon 2 months earlier. Ybarra, an avid gamer who often offered his opinion to the development team, sometimes to their dismay, had been looking to pivot away from the live service model. He had planned to cut down on microtransactions in Diablo and reboot Overwatch, which had underperformed throughout 2023. But he had made some enemies during the 2 decades he spent at Xbox before joining Blizzard, and the company's moving on. So Mike Ybarra wanted to move away from live service models and wanted to reboot Overwatch. Do you know what, right? This might sound insane, but I actually think this is still something they could do. I don't think they'll move away from the live service model now, because now they're in the world of, they've done the La Seraphim collab, the mythic skins rinsing people, the insane recolors for stupid amounts of money, all of this stuff you've just got added into the game. Like every other week, there's a new collaboration happening for collab skins that are just stupidly priced. They're obviously making money off that. You know, they're obviously targeting whales, then going after whales even more with this stuff. And it seems like maybe that's the way to financial security for Overwatch. That's, of course, if it's performing well. Of course, we'll never know now because it's been absorbed into Microsoft. We'll only be able to tell if there's like large-scale cuts in the Overwatch team, which would be made public. Not that I'm asking for that, by the way. Nobody should lose their job. But it's like, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? And I think I'll propose the question to you guys. Imagine if you rebooted Overwatch. I think that'd be great. I think that actually could be one of those moments. I've talked about this before in detail, but how do you make a splash as Overwatch? How do you make a splash now as Overwatch? You've lost the limelight. You're not going to bring out Overwatch 3. You're not going to drop Overwatch PvE. So what about
What
you?
if you go back?
Go-
Sometimes in order to move forward, you must move back.
Reborn, and we're going back to our roots. We're Overwatch. I'm not saying this is we go back to 6v6 or any of that crap. Just keep it at 5v5, whatever. I don't care. But I'm more talking about the image of the game. Imagine if the
Take
two's
that
removed,
shit back.
Overwatch is back. Maybe slightly update the logo or something like that. Nice animated short. Guess what? We're the new Overwatch team. This is the new vision for Overwatch. We are now this PvP game. We're developing this. We've got some new ideas we're going to bring forward. We're going to grow the world of Overwatch. We've got these different gameplay experiences with different games to give you guys. And then it would be nice if a Netflix series, Rob, this time as well, or an Amazon Prime series or something. That, to me, is the way that this game comes back to the limelight. And I don't think they can do that without creating that moment. It's almost like a launch of the game, isn't it? I think it would garner them a lot of positive press as well. But anyway, who knows? Like I said, they might be making tons of money off all their skins, so they just don't care anyway. Well, I'm going to leave you this video, guys, because I was lucky enough to get this shared to me by Jeff himself when he left. And he basically told me that he had showed this to Team 4 on his last day. And yeah, I'll leave the video at this. You should never play to the gallery. Catch you guys in the next one. See you soon.
Never play to the gallery, I think. But you never learn that until much later on, I think. But never work for other people at what you do. Always,
Yeah. Do it for
always
yourself.
remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. And I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that.
Yeah.
And if the other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little.
Yeah, I mean, what a great video. I mean, you know, I'm glad that we got Stylosis' perspective, because I think, you know, he probably is like it's him and Frito, I would say, are the two guys who are boots on the ground. Though I think Sty was more on the goody side of Blizzard. Frito challenged them in the right ways, to be honest. That's why, you know, it frustrates me when people give Frito shit, considering, like, you know, he challenged them and he was right on a lot of the stuff that he said in Overwatch 1 about where things went wrong. He's completely right. Yeah, I mean, right and wrong on both sides, you know, as expected, which is why I think it's really stupid when people sit here and scapegoat Bobby Kotick 100%. I also think it'd be stupid if you sat here and scapegoated Kaplan 100%. The reality is there was a big difference in vision from Activision and Blizzard, and this goes beyond Overwatch, and somebody was going to get caught in the crossfire, and Overwatch 2 was the boiling point of that. We could sit here and nitpick who was right and who was wrong as much as we want, but it won't change anything, right? It's time to let all that go and, you know, learn from it, and that's life, man. It's about getting back up when you get hit down, and I hope Kaplan, and I hope Goodman, and I hope Aaron, and I hope, you know, all those people can bounce back. Bobby's doesn't have shit to worry about. He's got his hundreds of millions and billions of whatever the hell he's got now, right? You know, so it's sad. I hope that they can find their direction out of all of this. Game development's hard. For all the grief that we give Blizzard, I think it's really fair that we acknowledge that and really feel for them on this. And, you know, it's life. It's sometimes you have to, you know, pivot. And I will say, to give Overwatch 2 credit, it has pivoted away from the mistakes well. I think 5v5 is the only big mistake that they made, and buffing tanks and all that shit. And I do think that they needed somebody at the core of the game who understands the game, and they clearly have not had that for Overwatch 2. Clearly have not had it, and clearly something's not entirely right, because again, they're hiring somebody else internally with the Microsoft transition. Overwatch just needs to establish its roots and figure out what it is that it does best. And, you know, if it's not a game that's for guys like me anymore, then it's not a game that's for guys like me anymore. You know, it kind of is what it is. If they're just going to make supports OP as fuck and make them really easy and sell skins on them and rip the skins, that's just kind of what the game's going to be. So yeah, it's okay. We'll wait and see. A very informative video from Sty. Shout out to Stylos. I'm glad I watched this. It gave me some new perspective. To be clear, like, I still like Jeff. I think Jeff's a great dude. I think he's a great leader, and I hope to be a leader like him one day, though I have a very long way to go before I'm ever at that point. Yeah, bummer. I hope everybody does well in life. You know, I hope they do. Okay. Great video, though, man. All right, guys. Well, I am going to call it there, and I'm going to go track down some of this shit that's on my plate. I really appreciate you guys coming to the streams and supporting the streams and doing all this stuff every day. I know it's kind of boring, so to speak, at times, just watching end-of-season games. We might be able to do some variety this week. We'll see. I've been thinking about playing some Borderlands or something. But we shall wait and see. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. I'll see y'all next time. Take care.